And now, let's join Maggie Linton on SiriusXM Urban View.
Well, welcome back. Later this hour, chat with singer-songwriter and country music star Scotty Mccreery with his memoir, Go Big or Go Home, The Journey Toward the Dream. But we begin with a woman whose life continues to evolve to bring us a great story and inspiration, too. Tricia Stewart Shiu is an award-winning author, screenwriter, playwright, former high-level executive assistant, and is also a recognized spiritualist and metaphysical guide. Her new adult novel is Please Hold, with a foreword by Hulu CEO Mike Hopkins. Welcome, Tricia.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. And I have to be honest with my listeners, I did not get the book, but I think there's plenty of us for us to talk about. And in particular, your life, because I'm sorry, you used to live in Overland Park, Kansas. I grew up in Leavenworth, Kansas, and then you went to Baker University, which is right down the road. So, hoorah for you.
Well, exactly. I read that, and I was like, oh, my gosh, we'll have so much to talk about.
Yes, we will. Let's begin with you're just going into the world of Hollywood and kind of taking it by a storm, and media in general.
Yes, I am. Well, actually, I've been here for quite a while. When I first moved here from Kansas, I started out working as a temp, just as a secretary, and I was a receptionist actually at the very the front part of Fox in HR, and I just slowly, within a couple of years, got this job with a pretty high-level executive. His name was Rupert Murdoch, and I was there for 8 years, and so I learned quite a bit.
That's to say the least.
Exactly. And it was interesting because, I think coming from Kansas, I have a certain way of viewing the world already. There's a certain work ethic. You complete tasks. You're asked to do something. You do it. You complete things. You're polite on the phone, that kind of thing. And that was always a given. But you know what? When I moved to Los Angeles, it turns out that was a big gift. And it actually was a standout quality. So anybody out there looking for work right now or graduating from college, and if you have any kind of work ethic, you will stand out. Absolutely.
And that's the thing. But your work ethic is really what moved you along, what got you noticed, where a lot of people wouldn't even start at that lower level position because they think it's beneath them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I was under the impression that I would just sort of be there temporarily, honestly. I wasn't going for a high-level executive position. I was writing. I was doing creative things. I kind of thought I would go on the more production side, but it turns out that just by virtue of showing up every day and doing my job in a normal way, I really rose quickly. And it was what happened was, as I observed this world from that place, I began to want more for myself spiritually. I wanted to know more. I wanted more depth. And sure enough, that gift came. It came many years later, but it certainly came.
Well, it came, and once you started the writing, though, you also got the spirituality and started realizing that there was more to life and ways for you to enhance your life.
I did. So through my challenges, I've always been an optimistic person. I've always looked for more, for the lesson in whatever I've gotten, and I was with Rupert Murdoch for 8 years, and then I left, and I began writing, and actually started writing bits and pieces of Please Hold. So it was just, I wanted to write about that world, because I thought, people need to know about this. It is too much. It really was, and it was coming from a very kind place. It was not a mean-spirited place. But what happened and what unfolded was I went on vacation to Hawaii, and I had this really unusual metaphysical experience. And what happened was I woke up, and I suddenly realized, I'd had something like that happen before when I was like 5, but I kind of forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was visited by this spirit in Hawaii when I was an adult, and it opened up this door for me. I thought, I need to know more about this. First of all, how am I hearing, seeing, experiencing something that I have never before experienced? And then once that sunk in, how do I believe myself? Like, how do I believe in myself? What was happening? So I just went in search, and I started writing about that. And so what I did was I unfolded this sort of unusual spiritual experience into Please Hold. So how does one find guidance? How does one divine guidance? How does one find spirituality? And it may be unusual, but I think it works.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, the one time I went to Hawaii really had I won't say a similar experience, but definitely realized that spirit was there. My friend and I we stopped by a church on our last night there, and she had lost her son earlier in the year to cancer at 24 years old, and so she was there for healing. And then while we were in this little chapel in Lahaina, another 2 women walked in, and we just started singing spirituals while we were there, Amazing Grace and a few other things. And then we said, let's take a picture. Well, when those pictures developed, because it isn't like today where you have the instant, on your camera or anything, there were 2 other Golden Globes that stood next to the 2 women who had lost my girlfriend, her son, and the lady, her dad, and they were there with us. And so I understand how you can feel a spiritualness and not realize that they're really there, but yet you have to accept that they are. It's
true. I think there's a certain belief you have to have in the unknown. And, whatever your religion, it's not really about that.
It's not about religion at all. No.
It's about a belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And, what happened was I went back to Fox in 2008, and I ended up working for the COO, who was sort of the right-hand man to Rupert Murdoch. His name is Chase Carey, and it was another high-level experience. I was basically dropped back into the world with all of the same people, same company, pretty much the same people. We're still there, few new people, and I'd had this spiritual awakening. I'd started studying and really, honestly, just being aware of my surroundings. And just like you did in Hawaii, where, you took this picture, you went with that beautiful feeling of like, we should sing, we should, join together. And then once the pictures came back, you had the validation. Something here. You knew something was there already. You then had the validation that something was there. And so I went back to work with this newfound sense of awareness, and it was really eye-opening. And so I continued to write. I kind of picked Please Hold back up. But I also really struggled because so many other people weren't aware. They really were shut down. And, I looked at that with compassion, but it was really challenging to be in the workplace with people who were just kind of numbed. They just were, going by, whatever was right in front of them, and they didn't really look ahead. And so the more I watched that, the more I started to pay attention to who was intuitive, who was sort of aware. And I noticed that the people I was working for were actually, even if they didn't call themselves intuitive or some kind of, psychic or clairvoyant, they were really using their intuition. And I was able to figure out how those people were successful. And the most successful people are incredibly intuitive and connected to themselves. Not everyone is, but I created some rituals, I call them. There's 3-minute things you can listen to and do anywhere to find balance, to find, there's one, self-trust. There is one to divine guidance, just to bring in your own inner guidance. And there's 3 minutes, you can do them anywhere. And so I kind of found my own way. I figured out a way to connect with spirit, with myself, and still stay in an integrity, a place of integrity in a workplace, which is really amazing.
All right. Once again, we are talking with award-winning author, screenwriter, playwright, spiritualist, and metaphysical guide, Tricia Stewart Shiu. We have a call from Alfred in Texas. Good morning, Alfred. Thank you for calling.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Maggie. Thank you for taking my call. I'm just enjoying a cup of coffee and enjoying your speaker. I just want to make a comment and then a question. I began my spiritual journey maybe about over a year ago, and when I went back, began to think about all these things that had happened in my life, it made me realize that yes, I was getting guidance. I'll just give you one example. When I was in high school, I went into the house next to us was on fire, and I saved 2 kids. And, you know, my sister is highly religious, and every now and then she'll call me and she says she's praying for me. And I say, hey, remember that house I went into and got those kids? Now, I've never been in that house before, Maggie, and I told her I did not find those kids, okay? So now I took that for granted then, but now I fully understand and realize, you know, it was part of my spiritual path and the guidance that I have. So I always ask for signs. So I just wanted to ask your guest today, as far as signs have always helped me. You actually really led me to this path. How we can go about looking for signs for my guardian angels.
Tricia.
Well, what a great question, Alfred, because just by being aware, you can find out. Everyone has a different way everyone has an extra sense. And I'm not saying that everyone is psychic or something like that, but what I am saying is, so every sense has an extra sense. You know, you see things, you can touch things, but then there's that extra sight. You can hear things, but then there's that extra, you know, audio. So the best way to find signs is to look for the unusual, the things that stick out. And the more you pay attention, the more you are aware of unusual, out of context, either events, people coming up and saying something to you, thoughts that just come out of nowhere, animals that sort of dart across your path, you know, something that you've never seen before. Those things are important just to pay attention to. You don't need to hang on to them, but it's definitely important because the more you tune into that, the more you connect with that part of yourself, the more you'll understand how you receive information. So you'll notice more, God, I really have this tingling sense. What the heck is that? And then you'll notice that every time you have that tingling sense, you're next to a certain person, or you're around a certain part of your house, or whatever that is. And then suddenly you can investigate. That's the next step, is that you can investigate that further and find out what that sign means. It's a great question.
Yeah. And also, if you ask for guidance, you will get it. But if you don't ask for it and you never are quiet enough to hear it, you also will not get it.
That's so true. Thank you so much, Maggie.
All right. Thank you, Alfred. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, more with Tricia. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back.
We'll be right back with more conversation about today's hottest topics right after this short break. This is the Maggie Linton Show on SiriusXM Urban View. And now let's join Maggie Linton on SiriusXM Urban View.
Well, welcome back. We continue with award-winning author, screenwriter, playwright, spiritualist, and metaphysical guide, Tricia Stewart Shiu. Her new novel is Please Hold. And Tricia, we haven't really talked about Please Hold. Let's tell people about it, because there's a little Mary Tyler Moore element in this.
There is. So we were taught it's quite a stretch for some people, however, not for this particular book, of course, because it's just all about the quirkiness of life and everything else. So it's, set in the real world of, fictional real world of Sarah Marks, who is a high-level executive assistant, and she goes up and down the corporate ladder. She's been there, done that, and she divines guidance in a very unique way, and that is with a shrine to Mary Tyler Moore. And although unusual, I felt such a pull. In fact, this was when I started writing this book early on, I was really led by the idea of when women started to show up in television. And I was so I was so moved by that show anyway, and I'm so connected to it. I feel like generations are connected to it, and I feel like there's so much to be learned by it. But what I love most about it is that the question comes up about how do we divine guidance? TV is in our house, and it is in front of us 24/7. How could it not have some kind of an impact? And this is about one woman who is divining guidance from it. She's actually finding signs, and not in a ridiculous way, but in a really, poignant way. There's a poignant connection to why she has this shrine.
We can just look at the media business still in general, not many women in it. Whether you look at radio, TV, the movies, anything, it's still kind of a vast wasteland that women still have not penetrated as much as they could or should.
Well, absolutely. You were a pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely would know this firsthand. You are absolutely right. And there's something in me that wants to explain to this next generation, because this is a new adult novel. So it's for those people. It's for adults as well, people that remember Mary Tyler Moore. But it's also something to explain to people about the struggle that women went through to even get into the workplace, and especially in media, and what that was like, and sort of the blurring of reality and fantasy, and how real this issue is of women really being able to show up and shine and speak up, speak their truth, and be themselves.
Yeah, that's so important. I don't think we'd see as much violence in shows and things like that if more women were decision makers.
I absolutely agree. If you look at any sort of executive team, there are some women, but they're peppered through. There's definitely a majority of men still, and this is 2016.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a lot of women still want to be on TV, and I go, no, look at the executive area. That's where you really need to be to make change.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
As you talk about Mary Tyler Moore and kind of listening to yourself, those kind of things, you look at women, and in a sense, I think that, they always talk about the women's intuition, but I think so often women have the time to listen because they're not worried about who's in power, but just merely taking care of family and friends and things like that, and trying to take that general path to some type of calm.
Absolutely. I also think, depending on, it really doesn't matter how you were brought up, but women in general are better at sensing and feeling things out. Women are kind of always reading the room. When they're caretaking, they're always kind of sensing, how does that person feel? How does that person feel? And then it's also kind of, we're raised that way to sort of pay attention to other people and pay attention to our intuition. So I think we're almost built with that in us. And it's just a matter, and you're right, women do listen and pay attention. It's an innate part of them.
As you went about, but we should also talk about your sci-fi series too, sci-fi mystical adventure series, MOA.
Yeah. Yeah, so MOA is a young adult science fiction mystical adventure series, and it is based on that spiritual experience I had in Hawaii. And just quickly, I'll tell you, it was pretty amazing. I did, you said before, if you want guidance, you ask for it and you'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a really tough place. I had a 2-year-old, a toddler. I was writing, but I just was in this in-between place. And my husband and daughter and I went to Hawaii. And before I laid down for this nap, I said, I just need some guidance. I laid down, and there was this Hawaiian spirit, Moa. And of course, it freaked me out. I opened up my eyes. Nothing was there. I closed my eyes. There she was. Then she started talking to me about, a kind of information. And I said to her, how can I believe this? And how could I possibly talk to anyone about this? And so she showed me a picture of a woman. I'd never seen her before. And she said, this woman's name is Sharon. Your mother-in-law has been missing her. And then that was it. I woke up, and I was like, oh, maybe it was a dream. My mother-in-law came in with my daughter. We all walked along. We went for a walk outside. My mother-in-law got ahead. I was pushing the stroller. She goes around a corner, and I hear her squeal. I round the corner. There's the woman in the picture. And my mother-in-law's hugging her, and she says, oh, my gosh, this is my friend Sharon. I've been looking all over for her, and I haven't I just found her. And that was my validation.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, you need those kind of things every now and then because, as we've said, a lot of times people are given the answer, but they're not paying attention because they're so busy moving on to the next thing, the next request, the next movement, the next thing they have to do.
Well, exactly. Not only that, but they're also maybe brushing it off. And what I've noticed with a lot of people that I've worked with is they don't investigate. Like, they think they're just supposed to take a sign for what it's worth, and that's why most people shrug it off is because, well, they don't know what it means, and who cares, or I don't know. But really, you can ask. You can say, well, thanks for that, hawk circling overhead 3 days in a row. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Why do I keep running into the same person over and over again? Finally, you're like, just tell me, and you'll get an answer. You will get, and what will happen is a thought will pop into your head. You'll say, I know where that is, or I know why that's happening. It's amazing if you just, not only if you pay attention, but if you investigate how you'll receive those messages.
Exactly. And a lot of times people will get them in dreams. Because I do a lot of mine in the dream area and wake up and knowing what I need to know.
Oh, I love that. Do you have a dream journal?
Yes.
That's great.
That I've kept for years.
You have for years. And so then that's great because now you've trained yourself to just pay attention to those things. That's a wonderful way to receive messages.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, oh, yeah, there's the answer. And I go in and I write it down real quick. I mean, I write it down really quick so that I'm ready for the next day. And that's it's almost like going through a checklist and go, okay, that's done.
Well, it's so good to write things down, too, because it's easy to just discount or forget something if you don't write it down, and those things are very important. Just sort of the minute it happens, write it down, and then you can write everything. Once you write it down, you probably now have a track. You can sort of track things and track messages. You can go back and say, okay, now I see how this was all coming together.
Right, exactly. So you've done the Please Hold. Are we going to continue with this one? Is this a series or is this a standalone?
There will be a series. So she'll basically continue on her path, and it kind of the book leaves you off with questions to be answered, and so those questions are answered. So I won't give too much away, but
Okay.
I will say that there's some questions that are answered in the next book, and that's coming out soon.
And with the MOA series, because young teens, that kind of stuff, do need some guidance, and a lot of times they're not finding it in their daily lives either.
Absolutely, and the rituals that I was talking about, they were actually born from this series of books, and I actually pulled them out and put them in a separate series called The Gatekeeper's Guide, so you can listen to them. They're on iTunes, but in the MOA series, they lead you through the story, and they can show young people how to do something physical, because sometimes, praying is wonderful, and really thoughts are powerful, but sometimes you have to actually do something. And so what I do is just say, you can do these things, you can imagine doing these things, and you can actually bring in a sense of protection, a sense of balance, that type of thing.
Whenever you need it, just ask for it and then wait for it to come. I have to tell you, you also, you're like going to a store because you have the essential oils too, which is also someone can use as a way of stimulating their spiritualness.
I do. So what I realized on my individual spiritual journey was that I have this gift of knowing what oils to combine together to help people to heal themselves. And so I put little recipes in some of the rituals. And so you can go in and kind of create your own, and they're very powerful. Who knew? Like, I honestly, I was a little skeptical about 5-6 years ago. If you would have said to me, do you like essential oils? I would have said, do you think they work? But I really figured out that, in the right combination with the right intention, I think an intention is very important. When you cook a meal, when you do anything, an intention is very important. And that's what these essential oil blends are all about.
And just getting ourselves in tune with each other. That's more than with ourselves. If we start with ourselves, then everything else will kind of fall into place, won't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really believe starting with yourself, centering yourself, you can go out and do anything you want to, anything you desire.
And I guess the writing is going to continue, and that's what you're doing pretty much full time now? And speaking?
Writing and speaking, yeah. Writing, I speak about intuition in business, but really believing in yourself. And so, writing, speaking, love mystical stories and that type of thing.
She's busy, folks. Listen, thank you so much. Once again, award-winning author, screenwriter, playwright, spiritualist, and metaphysical guide. It is Tricia Stewart Shiu. Her new novel is Please Hold, but go to her website. It is T. Stewart Shiu, and the last name is spelled S-H-I-U. So it's pronounced Shiu, but it's S-H-I-U, tstewartshiu.com, Facebook, and Twitter. She is also T. Stewart Shiu. Thank you so much. Wonderful talking with you.
Thanks, Maggie.
When we return, American Idol winner Scotty Mccreery. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back.
We'll be right back with more conversation about today's hottest topics right after this short break. This is the Maggie Linton Show on SiriusXM Urban View.